members of the 40 states, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our 15th post-cabinet press briefing in 2026. Allow me at this juncture to invite our chairperson, Honorable Minister Soda, to present today's cabinet highlights. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you, Chief Secretary. Allow me to welcome ministers who have joined us in today's post-cabinet briefing. We have the Minister of Defense, Honorable MTHULI NCUBE, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Professor Amon Muruwira, Minister of Agriculture, Mechanization and Water Resources Development, Honorable Dr. A. Masuka, the Minister of Sport, Recreation, Arts and Culture, Honorable General Retired A. Sanyatwe, the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Honorable Professor MTHULI NCUBE, Minister of Tourism and Hospitality Industry, Honorable Barbara Wodzi, and the Minister of Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage, Honorable Kazembe will be joining us. We also have in our midst the Honorable Deputy Minister of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services, Honorable Marupi, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, senior government officials, esteemed members of the Fourth Estates. Today, the 19th May 2026, His Excellency the President, Comrade Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa chaired the 15th Cabinet meeting, and the following issues, among others, were considered and approved. As chairperson of the Zimbabwe National Committee on Drug and Substance Abuse, the Minister of Defense, Honorable MTHULI NCUBE, presented an update on the National Drug and Substance Abuse Response, which was approved by Cabinet. The Zimbabwe National Committee on Drug and Substance Abuse is implementing a multi-sectoral drug and substance abuse plan running from 2024 to 2030, which is tailored to mitigate and ultimately eliminate the drug and substance abuse scourge in Zimbabwe. The committee coordinates actions across government ministries, law enforcement and private sector, and seeks to achieve set targets through 7 strategic pillars, which are as follows: supply chain reduction, demand reduction and prevention, harm reduction, treatment and rehabilitation, psychosocial support and community reintegration, resource mobilization and economic strengthening, media and communication, and legal policy reforms. The committee is successfully disrupting illicit supply networks and has achieved significant milestones as per the following selected highlights. Number 1, a total of 2,889 accused persons were arraigned before the courts and 381 convictions were secured. Secondly, approximately 453 drug suppliers, 2,436 individual end users, and 31 drug bases were dismantled in the selected districts of Manicaland and Mashonaland West provinces. Number 3, drugs and illicit substances valued at approximately 79,931,130 ZiG were confiscated. These included crystal meth, cocaine, ecstasy tablets, dagga, cuts, and unregistered medicines, including cough syrups, and removal of 32 children living and working on the streets. The committee also conducted regulatory compliance inspections across the country's provinces, with 615 legal licensed premises having been inspected and 36 unlicensed premises fined and closed. Other strategic interventions include robust awareness and prevention campaigns covering 285,000 918 beneficiaries, acquisition of drug testing kits, and the reintegration of 171 children with their families. Community-based prevention systems are underway, while vibrant drug rehabilitation, training, and entrepreneurship programs have been rolled out to approximately 37,937 youths and women. A United States $1 million Youth Empowerment Fund has also been launched. Government continues to spearhead the legislative and policy framework in order to strengthen coordination, accountability, prevention, rehabilitation, treatment, and enforcement interventions. Cabinet noted and approved the update on the water, sanitation, and hygiene situation in Zimbabwe as presented by the Minister of Agriculture, Mechanization, and Water Resources Development, Honorable Dr. Asias Jogwemasuka. The Interministerial Committee on Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene, commonly known as WASH, also as the WASH National Committee, is implementing an integrated multi-sectoral and whole-of-government approach for sectoral policy and strategy development. The committee is also implementing a number of projects and programs, and the following notable milestones have been achieved in the following broad areas. 1, development of a multiplicity of sectoral policy interventions such as the National Sanitation and Hygiene Policy and Strategy, WASH Compact, WASH in healthcare facilities, insurance strategy for rural water supplies, and others. Number 2, access to potable water in rural areas improved from 71% in 2016 to 81% in 2025. Number 3, access to sanitation facilities improved from 63% in 2016 to 65% in 2025. And finally, basic hygiene improved from 8% in 2016 to 11.9% in 2025. Regarding urban water security, most centers have raw water, which will last until the next runoff season due to raw water supply dams, which range between 70% to 98% full. As at 14 May 2026, the national dam levels were at 93.1% compared to 88% at the same time in 2025. The available water in the major dams will facilitate irrigation of 243,888 hectares throughout the season. Meanwhile, government has adopted, and I quote, the dam is the economy, close quote, model, which regards water infrastructure as the central engine for rural transformation towards the attainment of Vision 2030. Cabinet advises that dam water supplies are being augmented by the borehole drilling initiative under the Presidential Rural Development Program. A total of 5,258 boreholes have been drilled, thereby catalyzing the development of 1,589 village business units across all the country's provinces. In addition, a total of 4,837 solar-powered water schemes have also been developed across the 8 rural provinces of the country. The interventions have been extended to schools, with 79% of schools now having access to borehole water. Another critical milestone is in research and development initiatives, which have seen the development of innovations. These include life pumps and other models of hand pumps to augment water accessibility and enhance the sanitation under the following projects: Siakobo Water Project, Save Alluvial Aquifer, and others. Government has also identified a number of priority areas for the multi-sectoral control of cholera. Cabinet approved the report on the hosting of the 23rd United Nations Tourism Committee on Sustainability meeting and the 2nd United Nations Tourism Regional Congress on Women Empowerment in Tourism held at Elephant Hills Hotel in Victoria Falls from the 27th of April to the 1st of May 2026, which was presented by the Minister of Tourism and Hospitality Industry, Honorable Barbara Bodzi. The meetings, which were attended by a strong contingent of international and local delegates comprising inter alia representatives from Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Egypt, Sri Lanka, Zambia, Kenya, and Montenegro, were held under the patronage of the First Lady, Amai Dr. Auxilia Mnangagwa. The meetings achieved, among others, the following milestones. 1. Strengthening policy development. 2. Crafting of sustainable models for financing women in tourism business. 3. Promotion of targeted gender-responsive financial policies. 4. Promotion of tourism financing to enhance community-level and sector-wide inclusion. 5. Commitment to mentoring, investor, matchmaking, and rural economic inclusion. And finally, leveraging technology in tourism. Accordingly, Cabinet adopted the following key resolutions to support the establishment of the inclusive national committees to drive preparations for the forthcoming International Year of Sustainable and Resilient Tourism to be held in 2027. Scaling up capacity building to ensure that sustainability principles are embedded across institutions and communities, and the need to leverage flagship events aimed at showcasing Africa's biodiversity, rural livelihoods, and resilient economies. Government will also strengthen women's empowerment initiatives to ensure that no one is left behind in tourism development. Cabinet noted and approved the report on Zimbabwe's participation in Expo 2027 Belgrade, Republic of Serbia, as presented by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Professor Emon Murwira. Expo 2027 Belgrade is a specialized expo which takes place between World Expos and focuses on a specific area of human life being. Play for Humanity Expo 2027 Belgrade is structured around 3 thematic sub-themes, namely power of play, power for progress, and play together. The event will be hosted by the Balkan region for the first time and is expected to attract over 4.1 million visitors from over 120 countries and international organizations. Participation in Expo 2027 Belgrade offers Zimbabwe a cost-effective, high-visibility platform to promote brand Zimbabwe, attract investment, and strengthen diplomatic ties across European and global markets. The country will benefit through engagement and participation with global innovation programs, showcasing Zimbabwe's creative sector as both a cultural asset and an emerging economic driver. Youth participation at the Expo will be vigorously promoted in various activities at the Expo. The Minister of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture, Honorable General Retired Anselim Sanyatwe, presented the proposal for hosting the Creative Economy Expo of Zimbabwe in October 2026, which Cabinet adopted. Government, through the Ministry of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture, will host the Kuzana Sport and Creative Economy Expo at the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair grounds in Bulawayo Metropolitan Province from the 7th to the 11th of October 2026. Kuzana A Zimbabwean tonga, word meaning to dance or to play, serves as the perfect unifying title for the inaugural Sport Creative Economy Expo. The Expo seeks to position Zimbabwe as a regional hub for sports and creative economy development by 2030 while unlocking the economic potential of the two sectors. The Expo will run under the theme, and I quote, Kuzana towards Vision 2030 through sports and creative industries, close quote. Cabinet received and considered reports on progress made in the implementation of priority projects as at day 50 of the first 100-day cycle, which were presented by the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and International Trade and Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Professor Emon Murwira, reported progress on projects under his ministry as follows. A. Regarding Zimbabwe's bid for a non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council for the term 2027 to 2028, the ministry has successfully reached out to 106 out of 193 member countries, representing 55% against the initial target of 60%. Renovation of the VVIP lounge at the Robert Gabriel Mugabe International Airport is almost complete. Zimbabwe Annual Diaspora Conference, a total of 24 out of 30 investment and partnership commitments were secured, representing an 80% achievement of the target. Preparation of the global strategy document has reached 80%. 10 memoranda of understanding were signed during the Zimbabwe-Ghana Joint Permanent Commission on Cooperation held in Kumasi, Ghana. The Minister of Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage, Honorable Kazembe, reported on progress on projects under his ministry as follows. Construction of Insiza District Registry offices in Matabeleland South Province is at 80% completion. Construction of the Great Zimbabwe Visitor Center in Masvingo Province has been completed. Electronic traffic management system installation at 20 sites in Harare Metropolitan Province has reached 60% completion. Construction of Usambabezi border post in Matabeleland North Province has reached 95% completion. Cabinet considered and noted the first quarter 2026 economic developments and outlook as presented by the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Honorable Professor MTHULI NCUBE. The first quarter of 2026 was characterized by elevated global uncertainty, primarily reflecting escalating geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, which have contributed to higher energy prices, increased commodity price volatility, and unfavorable global financial conditions. The developments pose downside risks to the outlook of the domestic economy through their impact on the balance of payments, agriculture outputs, fertilizer shortages, inflation, exchange rate, and foreign reserves build up. To date, the domestic economy has remained broadly resilient, anchored by sustained macroeconomic stability and the successful rainfall season that has underpinned agricultural activity and continued policy reforms that are supporting and enhancing the ease of doing business. Commodity markets in the first quarter of 2026 were characterized by renewed upward pressures and heightened volatility, driven largely by escalating geopolitical tensions affecting global energy supply chains. Increasing production and transport costs, which tend to contribute to rising inflationary pressures, are being managed in order to protect jobs sustain livelihoods, and cushion the general citizenry. Economic growth is still projected to moderate around 5% in 2026, reflecting anticipated strong agriculture sector recovery and mining sector growth underpinning overall growth of the economy. However, elevated fertilizer prices and higher shipping and insurance costs are increasing agricultural input costs, with potential adverse effects on crop yields, food security, and overall economic activity. Government has already removed some of the taxes on diesel, thereby helping to contain costs and inflation and support growth endeavors. Fiscal developments in 2026 have so far been anchored on continued revenue recovery and expenditure containment, with total revenues projected to reach United States dollars 9.4 billion against a total expenditure of USD 9 billion. This performance reflects improved revenue collection and effective expenditure management. Year-on-year inflation declined sharply from elevated levels in 2025, where it peaked above 90% mid-year to 4.1% in January 2026, before easing further to 3.8% in February, and then slightly increasing to 4.4% in March due to the Middle East-related crude oil price shocks. This sustained decline highlights the effectiveness of stabilization measures implemented by the government. In the outlook, export performance is expected to remain relatively strong, supported by gold, other minerals, including platinum group of minerals, and lithium and tobacco in the medium term. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Professor Emon Murwira, presented the report on the Africa Forward Summit, Africa-France Partnerships for Innovation and Growth, which was adopted by Cabinet. The summit was held in Kenya from the 11th to the 12th of May 2026. Zimbabwe's major objective in attending the summit was to advance the engagement and re-engagement strategy by promoting global and pan-African solidarity. The summit also provided an invaluable platform for Zimbabwe to promote its image as a country ready to provide global leadership in preparation for the United Nations Security Council non-permanent seat elections to be held in New York on the 3rd of June 2026. The outcomes of the summit included, inter alia, adoption of the Africa Forward 2026 Declaration anchored on economic transformation, regional sovereignty, and African integration. The Economic Transformation Thrust entails moving from a model of resource extraction to industrialization and value addition within Africa, while regional sovereignty pertains to the support for Africa-led solutions to peace and security, particularly in Sahel and Horn of Africa, as well as reforming the United Nations Security Council representation. The African Integration Trust emphasizes leveraging the African Continental Free Trade Area for the greater economic integration among the 54 member states. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Professor Emon Murwira, also presented the report on the inaugural session of the Zimbabwe Equatorial Guinea Joint Commission on Cooperation, which was approved by Cabinet. The inaugural session was held on the 9th of May 2026. The objectives of the Joint Commission on Cooperation was as follows: to promote regional and pan-African cultural, economic, and political cooperation and integration, to consolidate the long-standing political and diplomatic relations between Zimbabwe and Equatorial Guinea, to expand bilateral economic cooperation and thereby unlock more trade and investment opportunities, and to finalize operationalization of the legal instruments aimed at deepening sectoral collaboration. The salient outcomes of the Joint Commission on Cooperation included the following: mutual commitment to the acceleration of economic cooperation, regional integration and enhancing political and economic consultations, promoting economic trade, cooperation in education, rationalization of visa fees, and affirmation to the need to cooperate in the agriculture, wildlife management, fisheries, tourism, and mining sectors. Significantly, the session provided a platform to finalize agreements and memoranda of understanding to be signed during the President of Equatorial Guinea's visit to Zimbabwe in June 2026. The MOUs to be signed are agreement on economic and trade cooperation, training of translators and interpreters, and the memorandum of understanding in the field of education. In general, the event successfully reinforced strong bilateral relations between Zimbabwe and Equatorial Guinea. Cabinet approved the report on Zimbabwe's participation at the 11th Review Conference of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons held in New York, United States of America from the 27th to the 30th of April 2026, which was presented by the Minister of Defense, Honorable Muchinguri Kashiri. Zimbabwe's participation was aimed at promoting international peace and security and to foster technological and scientific development through peaceful uses of nuclear energy. The visit also provided an opportunity to advance Zimbabwe's United Nations Security Council non-permanent seat bid by highlighting the country's commitment to peace and security through the full and balanced implementation of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. The outcomes of Zimbabwe's participation included enhanced engagement and collaboration with international organizations and countries that are committed to the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Going forward, government will consider options to catalyze industrialization and power generation through nuclear energy technology. It is noteworthy that Zimbabwe was elected to serve as the Vice President of Review Conference and Vice Chair of the Main Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Nuclear Energy. The election affirmed Zimbabwe as a champion of disarmament and the peaceful settlement of disputes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for presenting today's cabinet highlights. We now move to the first round of 3 questions. Yes.
Thank you, Chief Secretary. My name is Odin from ZBC. My first question is directed to the Foreign Minister. We have heard extensively through the briefing of Zimbabwe's bid for a non-permanent seat to the United Nations Security Council. What level of diplomatic support has the country secured ahead of the June elections? And given the evolving geopolitical dynamics globally, how confident is the country in securing the required votes during these elections? And my second question is to the Finance Minister. Honorable Minister, government implemented a strategic crackdown on smuggled goods last year. How has that program been effective in terms of saving revenue, especially at the Beitbridge border post? And then, how many sectors have to date benefited from the ease of doing business and regulatory fees reforms, and how many sectors are left? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I'm Richmond Siakurima, Radio Zimbabwe. Mine is directed to Honorable O.C. Muchinguri Kashiri. The last 2 weeks, Honorable Edgar Moyo addressing the media, he said rehabilitation centers are fewer in the country considering the number of children or the youths who require rehabilitation at those centers. Now I was saying when HIV and AIDS came upon us, government came up with the AIDS levy, augment government resources to fight the pandemic. And now we have drug and substance abuse, which is more of a pandemic to our youths. Why is government not coming up with a levy to augment the government to construct or build more rehabilitation centers that are free of charge, considering that our youths are not able to pay for rehabilitation in certain centers that charge a certain fee? I'm hearing the minister responsible for levies is also here.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Machako. I'm from the Herald. My question is directed to the Minister of Sports. How many exhibitors are you expecting at the Busana Expo? And will these be local exhibitors only? And can you kindly give us examples of activities that will be showcased at the Expo?
Thank you very much. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chief Secretary. The first question is directed to the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Orindori. Minister.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairperson, Dr. Soda. Thank you, Olin, for the question. You are asking about Zimbabwe's campaign for the non-permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council, and specifically seeking clarity on the level of diplomatic support and also recognizing the difficult geopolitical situation. I want to start by saying that a nation is always like a ship which is sailing in waters that can both be calm and rough, but nevertheless, the nation has to sail. That's statecraft in international relations. So His Excellency the President has pursued a foreign policy of friend to all and an enemy to none. That's one of our navigational tools in difficult situations. Zimbabwe has always been non-aligned, but Zimbabwe has now codified its non-alignment within its constitution, section 12, subsection 1, as well as the overall policy pillar of friend to all and the enemy to none doctrine. So yes, we are sailing through these rough waters. But what we are volunteering to do as a country by going to the Security Council, we are recognizing, that's why it is called the Security Council. We are recognizing that the world is a troubled place. And Zimbabwe is going to play its part in smoothing this troubled place. And the instrument for peace that we are using is called diplomacy, which is talking, not fighting. We always say wars are a result of failure of diplomacy, and peace is a result of success of diplomacy. So there's no smooth sailing, but it's sailing nonetheless. So far, how is our performance done? We have had well over 135 written commitments by countries that are outside of Africa to support Zimbabwe because of our stance on the supremacy of peace and supremacy of diplomacy. we, because of our stance and the stance taken by His Excellency the President, Dr. Edim Nangagwa's doctrine of friend to all and enemy to none, we are saying we are looking forward to great success in the number of votes. You would know that we went, first of all, to the African Union, where we are endorsed by 54 members of the African Union, which means those are 54 votes. We then went to the Pacific region, and in that Pacific region, we got overwhelming support from the Pacific Forum. We then went to the Caribbean, and we also received overwhelming support. We went to Eastern Europe, where we received very humbling, overwhelming support. We have received support from across the board. So far, we have not had the misfortune of hearing any negatives as when it comes to Zimbabwe's bid. So we are looking forward to a successful election on the 3rd of June 2026. But we are not going to sleep. We are still working and working very hard, because we cannot take any nation, any state across the globe for granted. We respect all, and we shall approach all. And we are looking forward, both the P5 members, which are the permanent members, whom we have talked to very successfully, and all other nations of the globe. Zimbabwe is ready to give its contribution to the world. We were once, twice, a member of the United Nations Security Council, and 35 years later, we are going back with a very clear policy of His Excellency the President, Dr. Edim Nangagwa, on how we have to engage with the world in a very peaceful way, in a way that takes the supremacy of diplomacy that is codified also in our Constitution. Both subsection 1 of section 12 and subsection 2, which makes us belong to the United Nations. And we believe in the Charter, so we are looking forward. Yes, it's always, it takes some butterflies, but the butterflies are the part of the adrenaline that we need to keep on moving. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second question is directed to the Minister of Finance from Olin Dori.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Olin, for your questions. The first one pertains to the contribution of the anti-smuggling crackdown, that program that we've been running literally for over a year now. First of all, this program has been very successful in contributing to revenue collection, make sure there's no discipline when it comes to such economic behavior. In the first quarter of this year, we've collected a total revenues of 2.55 billion US dollars against expenditures of 2.25 billion. So with a minor, small positive position. Now, the success of this anti-smuggling program relies on a partnership between ZIMRA, which is part of the Ministry of Finance, and the security cluster involving President's Office, police, army, and others. And it is working. We are aware that in some situations, members of the public have raised concerns about maybe too many roadblocks and so forth. But we had to, make sure that we stop this scourge of smuggling of goods. Now, but the way the program really started was through the deployment of drones, or shall we say, supplemented by the deployment of drones, which have been deployed in Beitbridge, in Forbes border post, as well as Chirundu and Plumtree, and we will cover the rest of the border posts. This supplements the crackdown on illicit imports. But also we're going to shift going forward to dealing with exports as well, because you also have smuggling of exports, and that too, especially around minerals, that too requires a very serious and considered effort to slow this down, to make sure that Zimbabwe can maximize value on its exports and minimize leakages on illicit imports. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Maybe if you could respond to the issue of the ease of doing business reforms. She wanted to know how many sectors that have been covered and those that remains outstanding.
Thank you for that second question. So we've covered the 13 sectors that we set out to cover in the first place. The last sector, as you know, was the mining sector, which is quite evolving. So we've covered 13 sectors. All the key sectors of the economy have been covered, and they ought to benefit from this program of reducing the cost of doing business. We are, putting the law in place using statutory instruments to make sure that we can put the force of law behind this reform agenda. And I must say that it has been an exemplary program, to be fair. We've done it in record time, as a massive program for reform. It's not a small matter. It's quite a massive program which we've managed to cover in record time. We will be producing a summary, even a booklet that really will then capture all the new fees and levies, but you, as members of the first state and the public, can have your own copies, just to show where we were and where we are now, and then we can keep track of these reforms and their impact on the economy. So we've really completed. I think you also asked about how many more sectors do we still have to go. We've actually completed this exercise. There may be one or two areas. In fact, our technical teams are doing a mop-up exercise to see if there's anything we left out. If there is, it will also be covered. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We move on to the third question, the fourth question from Richmond Siakurima, directed to the Minister of Defense. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Siakurima, about the issue which was announced by Honorable Edgar Moyo regarding the few rehabilitation centers which so far the committee has been able to put in place. He was coming from the background that every week 600 offenders are being arrested, and covering the period that we discussed today in cabinet, you are looking at 2,889 offenders that were arrested. And most of these are below the age of 35 years. And these are mainly young people who require rehabilitation, considering their significance in driving the economy. He was correct that so far we have only established Wilkins Rehabilitation Center, Amaveni Rehabilitation Center, also Chinotimba, Chipadze, Chikurubi, and Marondera. And the next one, which we are working on, is Gwanda. You may recall that our committee decided to start with 10 rehabilitation centers, one per province. And I want to say that we have already put in place 5, and we are remaining with 5. That was our priority. The next one, online, are the remaining 5 provinces. I want to thank the President for availing through the Ministry of Finance in the 2026 budget, setting aside 1 billion ZIG, which is meant to mitigate and make sure that we deal with the 5 remaining centers. So with the resources available, we will see an acceleration in terms of the construction or rehabilitation of these centers. So I want to say that yes, we are still lagging behind, but we are very happy also that there is a lot of resources now that have been availed by government. You need also to appreciate that over and above the budget, the Minister of Finance, perhaps he can add on some additional information where he has put in place also quite a number of interventions like the sugar tax and many other taxes, which he has availed to the Minister of Health to make sure that over and above the 10 that we prioritized, we have altogether identified 67 rehabilitation centers. So the struggle continues to make sure that we meet the demand, as I highlighted that already. We are receiving 2,000 young offenders who require this assistance. So I would want to assure the nation that government is making every effort to make sure that we avail these much needed centers. Let me also highlight that over and above what government has done and is going to do, there are some private institutions. We have more than 60 in place. Sadly, only 20 out of these private institutions are registered with the relevant health authorities. And we are worried that they are charging very high prices in these private institutions. And also some of them do not observe any regulations whatsoever. So from today, we directed as a committee that there should be some investigations in these private centers that are charging very high fees. We hear that there is a lot of abuse of these drug and substance abuses, and it is incumbent upon government to make sure that we address these issues as a matter of urgency. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The question from Deborah Matavu is directed to the Minister of Sports. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, my sister, Eva. Your question regarding the number of exhibitors as well as the activities that are expected to be conducted during the expo. But before I do that, it is important that we as the ministry, we will be the convener of this expo, of course, with the technical advice from a strategic private partner. And what we intend to do or to achieve as objectives of this expo, before I talk about the number of the exhibitors, is we intend to provide a consolidated market for buyers and the sellers of goods in services in the sport and the recreative sectors. We also intend to promote skills development, entrepreneurship, and the innovation among sports and the creative industry practitioners, and also to support the industrialization of sport, recreation, arts, and culture in Zimbabwe, among other objectives. And to do that, when we initiated during our initial planning of this expo, it has generated a lot of anxiety and interest, excitement, and for now, we have so far confirmed more than 20 exhibitors locally and from within our region. And we expect that number to increase now that the expo, the intended expo, has been adopted and approved by Cabinet this morning. And we will then expect to have activities, quite a number of activities to be conducted during the expo. And in a nutshell, the entire activities within the expo will be a combination of exhibitors or exhibitions, as well as conferences to be conducted during the expo week. That will also include sports and arts events, not forgetting entertainment. But overall, at the end of the expo, we will have a soccer match to mark the end of the expo that is expected to be held in the Baba Fields on 11 October. I hope I've answered your question, my sister.
Yes, the last three, not five, last three questions. Yes.
Thank you, Chief Sek. Wallace Bujito from the Herald newspaper. My question is directed at Honorable Minister Mbuyi. Minister, we understand that some of the pledges of support Zimbabwe has received are under reciprocal support arrangement. Can you please unpack for the generality of Zimbabwe what these are, and also how much support we have garnered under these? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Takuchi Ambakwe. My question is to the Minister of Finance. In the presentation by the Minister of Information, he spoke about the broader outlook. Now we're looking at the US dollar running till the 2030. There are some who might want to take loans, for instance, in agriculture to boost irrigation, in the manufacturing sector to expedite the exports that you were hinting there. What's the broader play here now, given the geopolitics and how volatile the markets are? Are you sticking to 2030 as the deadline for use of the US dollar in the country, or are you going to be a bit flexible? Thank you.
Last one.
Okay, my name is Daniel Chikun from Open Pali. I don't know whether it's directed to the Minister of Sport or the Minister of Tourism. So the expo, we understand also that it falls also, part of it falls under the Ministry of Tourism as part of my business. So I just wanted to find out, because when you were answering the questions, you didn't mention the Minister of Tourism. So I just wanted to find out if there is any part that the Minister of Tourism is playing, probably in marketing this event.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chief Secretary. The first question is directed to the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Wallace Richard. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Wallace, you asked on the reciprocal support arrangement. A reciprocal support arrangement is made between two states or two countries where, for example, I will just say an example, Botswana. Let's say Botswana wants support in the World Health Organization. Is a candidate there. This is theoretical. And Zimbabwe wants support, in this case, at the UN Security Council non-permanent seat. We then write each other letters to say, if you support me there, I will support you there. Kandiro enda, kandiro tsoka. Matambana kudu. So, this is arrangement between countries. So far, we have had well over 120. And some of them, we promised them that will support you in 2060. Because countries plan on the long term. And when we are planning and representing Zimbabwe, we know that Zimbabwe won't die. And that country won't die too. So we can even promise them that in 2070, we are going to support you in your long-term plan of doing things. And this is the reality that we are facing. So reciprocal support arrangements are friendly arrangements between countries for mutual support. And it's not necessarily to support them in their bid in the UN Security Council alone. It can be in any other international body that we can do that. So far, to be moderate, we have received overwhelming support through this arrangement. And some support us unconditionally. So a reciprocal support arrangement is a conditional support to say, we do this if you do this. So this is where we are, and we will see on the 3rd of June. But the prospects, normally nations don't lie. Once they have committed, they do what they have committed to. There is stability in the international environment, where nations like Zimbabwe, that's why we say Zimbabwe is always pursuing a mature and stable foreign policy. Zvatataura nhasi, tikatinoita mangwana tinoita. And countries are like that. So we are looking forward to the implementation of that vote on the 3rd of June 2026 in New York. We are really looking forward to it and watch the space. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Question from Takuchi Ambabwe directed to the Minister of Finance. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairman, for your question regarding the de-dollarization agenda. I announced in the November budget last year to cover the 2026 year, and also subsequently in the monetary policy statement of the central bank in Q1 of this year. The announcement was that the journey towards mono currency will no longer be driven by dates. It's no longer date driven, but rather it will be determined by conditions in the market. It will be market led. More importantly, there are certain conditions precedent that should be satisfied first, even in that market determined leadership in terms of adopting mono currency. These should be satisfied first before we move towards monocurrency. So the date of 2030 no longer is a determinant factor in the adoption of monocurrency. But what are these conditions precedent? For example, it's things such as the build-up of foreign reserves, and these reserves should cover at least 6 months in terms of import cover. That's one. Two, we need also a longer track record in single-digit inflation territory, because in the long run, the equilibrium level of any exchange rate is determined by inflation differentials. So you want to make sure that your level of inflation is as low as possible, and you maintain that record vis-a-vis the inflation in major currencies. That will then reduce the likelihood of any sharp depreciations because your inflation differential is low. So that's also a condition precedent. But you mentioned something about what then should happen to US dollar loans if they were to be contracted now into the future, although the date doesn't apply, by the way. Those will be grandfathered. Banks are free to contract loans or enter into those kind of contracts in US dollars. They'll be grandfathered in the sense that they'll be honored in the currency in which they were contracted. The US dollars, they'll be honored in US dollars. This was made clear in the last monetary policy statement as well. So be guided accordingly. No one needs to fear any sudden imposition of monocurrency. Everything will be market determined. We work with the market, but making sure that certain conditions are met in the process. And those are the conditions we're calling conditions precedent. I thank you. Chair, while I have the microphone, I wanted to jump in. I want to jump in to add to what the Minister of Defense had explained regarding the budget for support drug and substance abuse. I want to say that when we introduced the levy or taxes on the gaming industry and the gambling industry, we said that these are what we call sin taxes, some of which a part of the revenue then will be applied to deal with certain issues that are bedeviling our society. So the levies and taxes on gaming and gambling will be applied towards the drug and substance abuse scourge going forward, in addition to the normal budget, the 1 billion ZIG that Minister of Defense mentioned. We're just waiting for these revenues to stabilize. We notice that each time we introduce a tax, it takes about a year to 18 months for the revenues to stabilize before you can start applying them in the right area. So this tax for gaming and gambling will be earmarked to support the drug and substance abuse response program. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last question from Daniel is directed to the Minister of Sports. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, my brother Daniel. Regarding your question, in fact, the ministry will convene a technical committee which will include all relevant ministries that will enable to coordinate for the success of the expo. In a nutshell, basically is the whole of government approach for the expo to be conducted and to meet the objectives that we will set. Otherwise, the team will be convened. Immediately after, we will sit back with my staff for the purposes of coordinating as we move into the future or forward. I thank you.
Honourable Minister, we come to the end of today's post-cabinet press briefing. Let me thank members of the first court stage, the questions, and also the Honourable Ministers for responding to these questions. We meet next week.
Thank you.